Think about the last time you ordered something online.
Right.
You know, you click a button, your credit card processes, and you get that little tracking number. And then there's this little blue line on a map that tells you exactly when that package is going to arrive at your front door.
Yeah, it's a very comforting image.
It is. And for a long time, we just treated that process like a law of physics. Like it was just
We
guaranteed.
really did. I mean, it was an incredibly convincing illusion, right?
Yeah.
This idea of perfect, uninterrupted flow.
Exactly. Just click, ship, arrive. But I mean, lately, and I think you listening can probably relate to this, there's this quiet, lingering feeling that something in that perfect machine is just slightly off.
Yes, something is definitely off.
And it's not some massive emergency, you know? It's
Yeah.
not like the apocalyptic supply chain crashes we saw a few years ago. It's just, well, you go to the grocery store and your specific brand of coffee is just missing for a month.
Right. Or you order a piece of furniture and it gets delayed and
Yeah.
then delayed again.
Yeah. With absolutely no real explanation. It's just this low-grade, everyday friction.
It's a very subtle shared discomfort.
Yeah.
Everyone is kind of feeling it. And, what is structurally fascinating here, and what our sources for this deep dive really dig into, is that this feeling you're describing isn't just in your head.
Right. It's an actual thing.
It is. It really isn't just a, temporary hiccup that's going to smooth itself out next quarter. If we look at the underlying structures, we are actually experiencing a fundamental phase shift in how the physical world operates.
Okay. A phase shift.
Yeah, because despite global logistics being more technologically advanced, more digitized, and more tracked than ever before in human history, the actual stability of that system is dropping.
Which is wild to think about because under the old mindset, the efficiency mindset, the entire global economy was basically running on the assumption that the world is this flat, perfectly paved road, right?
That's exactly it. Efficiency as a global paradigm was basically just an optimization algorithm. And it was an algorithm that kind of forgot to account for the real world.
How do you mean?
Well, it was a technology of peacetime. It assumed that the underlying conditions of the world were permanently quiet. Demand would always be predictable, shipping lanes would stay perfectly open, and costs were simply a matter of straightforward math.
Right.
And in that perfectly stable theoretical world, the only logical goal was to find the shortest path and the absolute lowest cost. It relied entirely on the existence of a single optimal route.
So it's kind of like using a GPS that only ever shows you one single blue line to your destination. And it just assumes there will never, ever be traffic or construction or like a freak snowstorm.
Yes, exactly. It assumes the road is always clear.
But the road isn't clear anymore. But wait, I mean, hasn't the world always had disruptions? Why is it suddenly fundamentally breaking down now?
That is the core question. And to understand why that hyper-optimized system is duckling now, we have to look at the mechanical structure of the world through the concept of membranes.
Membranes, like biological membranes.
Not quite. Think of the modern world as being made up of overlapping layers, or actually tectonic plates is a better way to visualize it.
Okay, tectonic plates, I'm tracking.
So you have the digital market plate, you have the physical logistics plate, which is the actual ships and trucks, you have the regulatory state plate, and you have human culture.
Right.
And in our current hyper-connected era, these tectonic plates are moving at wildly different speeds.
Oh, okay. Ground this for me, though. Give me an example of these plates moving at different speeds.
Sure. So take the digital market plate.
Yeah.
Financial algorithms, commodity futures, digital consumer data. These things operate at an OS speed that is measured in milliseconds.
Right. A bot can buy 1 million units of something in a fraction of a second.
Exactly. They react to a piece of news instantly. But sitting right beneath that lightning-fast digital layer is the physical logistics plate. Cargo ships traversing the Pacific Ocean. Cranes offloading shipping containers at a port.
And those are massive physical objects.
Very massive. That physical reality is slow, it's heavy, and it's bound by gravity. It moves at maybe 20 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And then below that, you have the regulatory or diplomatic plate, which is even slower. I mean, taking years to pass a single trade policy.
Wow. Okay. So it's like you have these massive gears in a machine and they're spinning at completely wildly different rates. And where those gears touch, you get like violent sparks.
Yes, and those sparks are literally burning capital. When a high-frequency trading bot tries to seamlessly interact with a diesel-powered cargo ship.
Which sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud.
It does, but that's the system. Or when lightning-fast digital consumer demand tries to instantly drag a slow-moving physical supply chain forward, The contact points between those membranes experience intense friction.
So they're grinding against each other.
Exactly. Physicists call this a phase difference. And this friction heat, this shear, is what's causing the systemic breakdowns.
Oh.
Because of this constant grinding friction across multiple overlapping plates, that single optimal route on your GPS,
Yeah.
it no longer physically exists.
Because the map itself is basically buckling while you're trying to drive on it.
Precisely.
But I mean, if the straight line is dead and we're dealing with all this structural friction, what replaces it? Because at the end of the day, the goods still have to get here, right?
They do. But the structural shift we're looking at implies that logistics is no longer a line from A to B. It is now a surface.
A surface.
Yes, a distribution of passing probabilities.
Okay, that sounds a bit abstract.
It is, but it is the crux of the whole phase shift.
Hmm.
It fundamentally changes the entire metric of success for the global economy. Under the old efficiency paradigm, the only question was, how fast and cheap can we transport this item?
Right, optimize everything.
But the new metric is entirely different. The new question is, what is the probability that this item will actually survive the journey and arrive at all?
Wow. Okay.
We have literally moved from measuring speed to measuring survival rate.
So we're shifting from a world of guaranteed contracts to a world of statistical odds? That's huge. Delays aren't just an annoying exception to the rule anymore. Delays are the baseline premise of the entire system.
Yes. The bottleneck isn't a fixed point on a map anymore, like a specific backed-up port. The bottleneck is a fluctuating probability field.
A fluctuating probability field. That is a really profound cognitive leap. So the flow of goods is no longer a single rational path that you can just, draw with a ruler.
Not at all.
It's this constantly shifting surface that has to mathematically recalculate insurance rates, military tensions, sudden weather events, port capacities, just all of it, all the time.
Right, and it has to do that at every single membrane intersection.
But wait, if logistics is no longer a straight line, but this incredibly volatile probability surface, who pays for that volatility? Because if I'm like a manufacturer and I'm relying on a critical component from overseas and the delivery time is now somewhere between 2 days and 2 months, my financial risk just skyrocketed.
You've just hit on the exact mechanism of the contact layer. That risk doesn't just evaporate. It gets mathematically baked into the physical world.
How so?
Well, in this new paradigm, market prices are no longer simple. Textbook calculations of supply and demand for raw materials.
Right, so think about the last time you bought like a laptop or even just a car part. You probably assumed the price tag covered the cost of the plastic, the silicon, the labor to build it, and, a profit margin for the company.
Naturally, that's what we were taught.
What you are actually paying for now is what analysts are calling fluctuation insurance.
Exactly.
The price has basically absorbed the massive cost of all the alternative routes that might have had to be taken. It's pricing in the geopolitical tension near a specific maritime strait halfway across the world.
Yes, and it's pricing in the statistical risk of a major port suddenly going on strike.
Right. So that price tag isn't just a cost of materials anymore. It is a live data point representing the probability that the supply chain will hold together.
Price is information about the probability of flow.
That is fascinating.
And when we really understand that, we can see how this changes the literal landscape of geopolitics and warfare, too.
Oh, right, because it's not just economics.
No, not at all. International conflict is no longer just about pushing front lines and taking physical territory. Modern warfare is increasingly about controlling these membrane intersections.
With choke points.
Choke points, yes.
Yeah.
It's about manipulating the probability field of logistics.
How exactly does that work in practice, though? Like, how do you mathematically manipulate a probability field in a war?
It's about injecting structural uncertainty rather than necessarily causing physical destruction.
Yeah.
Let's say a geopolitical actor wants to disrupt an adversary's economy.
Okay.
They don't actually need to sink a massive cargo ship. That takes a lot of effort and invites direct retaliation.
Right.
They merely need to fly a military drone persistently near a major shipping lane.
Just hover it there.
Just its presence, because the mere presence of that drone triggers an automated risk assessment in maritime insurance algorithms in, say, London.
Which operate at that millisecond digital speed we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The algorithms instantly spike the insurance premiums for any commercial vessel entering that lane by, like, 400%.
Making it financially ruinous for a company to ship through that lane, even if not a single actual weapon is ever fired.
Precisely. The physical flow of goods is stopped entirely by altering the mathematical probability of survival. You degrade the survival rate of the supply chain by casting doubt on alternative routes, raising insurance to impossible levels, or implying the threat of sanctions.
So war is basically waged by making the flow of essential goods highly uncertain.
Yes,
And that global manipulation of probability, I mean, that trickles all the way down to the cereal aisle for the listener.
it absolutely does.
Let's bring this back to the grocery store for a second. Because this massive structural shift, this phased transition from efficiency to probability, it doesn't look like an apocalyptic movie with sudden, dramatic, totally empty shelves.
No, it's not a sudden collapse. It's something much quieter.
It's the quiet squeeze, right?
Yeah, if you look at the data structurally, it's what physicists would describe as the quietness before a phase transition. The system is fundamentally altering its state, but on the surface, it maintains this veneer of normalcy.
A veneer. So it's a slow, barely perceptible shrinkage of choices. You go shopping, and instead of 5 options for your favorite brand of pasta, there are only 2.
Right.
It's a gradual decline in the quality of the alternatives you do have. It's those wildly unpredictable delivery times for really mundane items that used to reliably take 2 days.
Exactly.
And of course, it's the creeping price hikes we just talked about, driven by that hidden fluctuation insurance. The system looks like it's still running. I mean, the lights are on in the big box store, but the actual passing rate of goods is silently, steadily dropping.
And this quietness raises a really critical point about human perception.
Mm.
Because the surface of daily life appears relatively calm, it is incredibly easy for us to misinterpret what's happening.
Like, we just brush it off.
Right, we tell ourselves, oh, it's just a temporary supply chain snag, Pores is backed up, it'll go back to normal next quarter.
What if it won't?
No, because the underlying friction, that heat between the tectonic plates, is actively accumulating. The systemic cost required to maintain that comfortable illusion of a normal, uninterrupted flow is getting exponentially higher.
Which means we can't keep looking at the world through the same lens. Our expectations are completely out of sync with structural reality. We essentially need an upgrade.
They do.
And this brings us to the core cognitive shift from the source material. Moving from an efficiency operating system to a probability operating system.
Yes. So under the old efficiency OS, the worldview was entirely linear. As we discussed, there was one objectively right answer. Maximize speed, minimize waste, hold zero inventory, and assume peacetime conditions forever.
Right.
But under the new probability OS, that linear thinking isn't just outdated. It is a fatal liability. There is no single right answer or optimal route anymore.
So what's the goal then?
The primary goal of any system now is maintaining extreme flexibility. It's about keeping variable ranges wide open amid constant, unpredictable fluctuation.
But I mean, think about the inertia we're up against there. Like if a CEO today goes to their board and says, hey, I'm buying 3 massive warehouses to just sit on extra inventory. Or if a logistics manager intentionally pays for redundant, longer shipping routes just in case.
They'd be heavily criticized.
They'd get fired. Under the old OS, that is the literal definition of terrible management. It's inefficient. We have entire generations of business leaders trained to ruthlessly eliminate exactly that kind of fat.
Well, they were trained for a world that no longer exists.
Wow.
And that is the exact trap of OS incompatibility. In the probability OS, inventory isn't wasteful fat. It is vital margin.
Okay.
Redundant overlapping shipping routes aren't inefficient overhead. They are your actual survival rate. What used to be penalized as a cost to be cut is now the exact structural padding that prevents an irreversible, catastrophic failure when the system shears.
So the padding is the point. The inefficiency is the feature, not the bug.
Yes. And the danger here is profound. Decision makers, whether they are corporate executives building supply chains or policymakers drafting trade agreements, or honestly, even just individuals planning their household budgets, if they are stuck running that linear efficiency OS, they will look at a structurally altered world and see it as a continuation of peacetime.
They'll misinterpret the friction.
Exactly. They will look at the grinding friction between these fast and slow membranes and think it's just temporary noise that can be optimized away.
They'll keep trying to tune an engine that is fundamentally driving on a different road. Like they'll keep drawing that single blue line on the GPS, ignoring the fact that the actual road is actively buckling underneath them.
Right. The fast-moving digital layers will keep trying to force impossible efficiency onto a physical world that is bogged down by friction, weather, and probability.
Which brings us to, really, the ultimate consequence of this worldview shift. We have to fundamentally redefine a very simple concept that anchors our daily lives. The concept of arriving.
Exactly, the concept of arriving.
Let's just sit with that for a second. For you, the listener, expecting a package to land on your porch, or a raw material to reach your small business, or, heaven forbid, a critical medical resource to reach your community, arriving is no longer a guaranteed contract.
No, it is not.
It's no longer just a simple equation of distance divided by speed.
It's now a highly conditional event. Whether an object arrives is heavily dependent on an incredibly complex intersecting web of, global weather patterns, momentary political posturing, automated insurance algorithms, and the psychology of the market on that given day.
Yeah.
The very concept of arriving has been downgraded from a baseline certainty to a statistical probability.
It radically shifts your entire worldview when you start looking at everyday objects as physical manifestations of probability. Like that ceramic coffee cup sitting on your desk right now isn't just a static object, it's a testament to a supply chain that managed to successfully navigate and survive a massive fluctuation field.
That is a very accurate, very grounded way to observe it. We have to stop asking the linear question, when will this item get here? And start asking the structural question, under what specific conditions will this physical flow be maintained, and under what conditions will it break?
Okay, let's take a breath and review the landscape we've just traversed in this deep dive. We started with that subtle, quiet, everyday feeling. The slight delay, the mysteriously missing item on the shelf, the low-grade friction in the logistics machine that we all sense but couldn't quite name.
Right.
And we've uncovered a global structure that is undergoing a massive phase shift. We are moving away from an illusion of highly optimized certainty and stepping into a reality governed by probability, deep structural friction, and the sheer force of overlapping membranes moving at wildly different speeds.
And, remaining true to the analytical nature of this observation, there are no tidy solutions to offer here.
Right. We're not going to give you a top 10 list of supply chain hacks.
No, there is no 10-step checklist of advice to magically fix the global supply chain. And frankly, there's no reason to default to panic or fear either.
Yeah.
The situation is not a crisis to be solved. It is a structural gradient that we simply must observe clearly.
Yeah.
The world is still flowing, goods are still moving across oceans and continents, but the nature of that flow is no longer a given guarantee. It is actively being rewritten, recalculated, and repriced at every single membrane it passes through.
We've gone from the comfort of the single blue GPS line to navigating a highly volatile topographical map of shifting global weather systems. So we want to leave you with the final thought, a different way to apply this that wasn't strictly mentioned in our logistics breakdown today. Yeah, we've talked entirely about cargo ships, global supply chains, and market pricing, but think about how this probability OS applies directly to your own life or your career or even your biology.
That's an interesting angle.
If you over-optimize your own personal life for maximum efficiency, if you schedule every single minute for maximum output, leave absolutely no downtime, have no emotional or financial buffers, and just assume you will always operate at peak peacetime capacity, you are entirely fragile.
They're running the old OS.
Exactly. The moment a disruption hits the membrane of your life, an unexpected illness, a family emergency, a sudden shift in your industry, your perfectly optimized system collapses because there's zero margin for error.
Right.
So maybe building padding into our own lives, our schedules, and our expectations isn't lazy or inefficient. Maybe, in a world defined by friction and unpredictability, building that buffer is the only way to survive the fluctuation field of being human.
It is a profound shift in how we perceive resilience, both globally and personally. Thank you for joining us and observing these subtle tensions and structural gradients.
Keep your eyes open to the quiet phase shifts happening around you, and thanks for taking the deep dive with us.